You Please Come to Chicago, a Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young anthem from another Chicago convention, I'd like to say, but I just found out today that that was actually written in 1971 by Graham Nash before the Chicago 7 trial, but it's really the Chicago 8 trial, but that's, see the movie. That was the height of the Vietnam War protest. And now there's another war going on, and those 60s protests may be coming back to haunt the DNC in 2024. This is a song for what they used to call the New Left. You know, the Tom Hayden, Jerry Rubin, Joan Baez, Bobby Seale, Abby Hoffman, Dave Dellinger, and Jane Fonda gang. Now the New Left, if you're keeping a scorecard at home, that was the New Left. I don't know what you'd call the left today. Why I'm calling this show is Talk of the Bay series, what's left of the left in Santa Cruz, because the old left or the new left progressives have been getting their butts kicked a lot over the past few years. We've been through it, folks. 5 bruising election battles, beginning with rent control and followed by more ballot measure losses, including empty homes tax, Our Downtown, Our Future, and most recently, this past March, the group Housing for All lost their right to vote on height initiative. Now throw in the successful recall of 2 city council members, and I would venture to guess that the moderate conservative money has delivered to Santa Cruz a solid pro-real estate and pro-market rate housing developer city council. It is assumed by some that when the last progressive, Sandy Brown, leaves office this December, the light will be turned out on the Santa Cruz progressive era. Or will it? You may be left wondering what happened to progressive Santa Cruz and the birth of the leftist politics here almost 60 years ago when UC Santa Cruz first opened its doors. Well, today we are discussing Big D Democrat electoral politics, which certainly assisted in bringing progressive politics to Surf City. So let's get on with it. Live from the Harvey West Park studios at KSQD Radio, we have a studio full of Democratic Party delegates ready to discuss electoral politics, and all of whom, although maybe just 2 out of the 3, will be traveling to Chicago in a couple of weeks for the Democratic National Convention. First up is KSQD's own Tony Russomanno.
Hello!
But on the other side of the microphone, Tony attended his first Democratic National Convention as an NBC reporter in New York in 1976.
Right.
And briefly gave away his floor pass to actors Louise Lasser and Chevy Chase.
I had to. I was ordered. I was the little man on the totem pole.
So they could shoot a skit for that week's Saturday Night Live.
That was a plan anyway.
Tony, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Thank
I
you.
hope we'll catch up on that story a little bit later in the show.
Hey, I never knew this about you, Chris. You got the patter of a top 40 DJ. Man.
Lani Faulkner is fresh off a campaign for supervisor. She lost that campaign, but won the campaign to be a delegate at the National Convention.
Hello, Chris. Thank you.
She is the founder of Equity Transit, a local transportation advocacy organization. Lani's background as a researcher guided her on a deep dive into local public transit issues. She's a mom and a woman of color who served 7 years as a mountain bike coach for middle and high school kids. She's also a triathlete and a classically trained opera singer with a BS and MS in physiology from UC Davis. Lani, welcome back to Talk of the Bay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. It's so great to be here again.
Our third Democratic National Convention delegate is Nelly Vaquera, is an educator and a president of the Pajaro Valley Federation of Teachers and the elected vice president of the Executive Council of the California Federation of Teachers, a union of educators and classified professionals. She has lived in Santa Cruz for 18 years and proudly raised 2 children who attended Pajaro Valley schools. Many know Nelly Vaquera as a fierce advocate for public education and labor rights. Nelly, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Thank you.
Lani, DNC delegate, how excited are you about being a delegate? And what do you think the responsibilities of delegates are?
I think this is a huge, amazing. I'm so excited. This is a historical moment in time for us. I think we were ready to be there for Joe Biden as delegates and ready to support him on what needed to be done. But a lot of us, quite honestly, after that fateful debate, really were concerned. and we're watching.
Concerned, depressed. I wanted to bang my head against the top of the table. I think that was a feeling everybody had.
Absolutely, and
Universal.
Literally within hours after Biden announced stepping down and Kamala Harris was his choice, his endorsed choice, there was just a lifting of energy. My husband said, I'm actually going to donate to the campaign. People from all over the county were reaching out and so excited. And I personally am incredibly excited, not just because Kamala Harris is an amazing candidate and as a woman of color, because we're so behind. We're decades behind bringing a woman on as president. There's just so many reasons to be excited, to have a younger voice of experience in the mix.
Tony
Amen.
Russomanno,
Amen.
1976
Yeah.
DNC,
Yeah.
Madison Square Garden. What was that like?
Oh, well, I was, like I said, NBC Radio, and I had a floor pass as one of like a half dozen or so NBC reporters. I was assigned to radio, so I was just hanging around. And because I was a low man on the totem pole, I got a phone call from a boss who said, you need to give up your floor pass today. Louise Lasser's coming down. She wants to see the convention. Well, Lasser was hosting Saturday Night Live that week. I think it was her second season. So he said, Chevy Chase will come down with her and give them your floor pass, and they'll go off and do what they want to do and come back. All right. So I'm sitting down on the NBC little bunker in the very bowels of Madison Square Garden, and in they troop, just the two of them. Louise is just higher than a kite. She can't see 2 feet in front of her. Her eyeballs are spinning around her head.
Mary Hartman.
And she slides down. Of course, she slides down the wall into this kind of fetal position and just sits there quivering. Poor lady. And Chase comes down. He walks over to me, no introduction. Just say, "You got that pass?" Yeah. All right. And then he sits down with Lasser, and he starts talking to her in her ear. And I think he was just trying to talk her down and keep her quiet, or maybe he was feeding her more Coke. She was definitely on something not good. And they just sat there for about an hour. Finally, they got up and left and gave me the pass back. They were supposed to shoot a skit for Saturday Night Live that week. I don't think they ever got to it, which doesn't really matter because it is universally regarded as that particular show was the worst Saturday Night Live show in Saturday Night Live 49-year history.
That was Jimmy Carter convention.
That was a Carter convention. That's right, and also Jerry Brown showed up there. So here's how.
Yeah, he was running that year.
That's
too.
right. Yeah. So I was assigned. Go off, and they said, "Oh, Jerry Brown. Typical New Yorker, right? You know what it's like. Grow up in New York and the attitude about California at the time. Go ask Jerry Brown, about sleeping on the bed in the floor. Sleeping on the bed that keeps on the floor. Right. That's all they wanted to hear about. Or ask him about dating Linda Ronstadt. that was how NBC wanted to cover a presidential candidate that year. And as you can tell, not much has changed.
Nelly Vaquera is the is the president of the Pajaro Valley Federation of Teachers. Nelly, this is, I think, Tony's 5th convention. This is your first.
Yeah.
What's your expectations? What do you think? What have they have they primed you for anything?
I've attended one of the orientation meetings that they have put on over the past month, and I am still full of anxiety. I'm excited, and just as Lani was talking about, just the just the reinvigoration of like the energy, the excitement to be a part of this process. And I am I'm anxiously awaiting, nervous, and just super grateful that I actually was able to get, how did I get people elected, the three of us? And so that's what I'm grateful for. It's like, wow, I put my name in the hat with just this hope of, this is something I'm interested in. While I'm the president of our federation for our local district, it just seemed like something, another level of political involvement. And so it was, I put my name in the hat and put it out there to the people who were voting. And so, yeah, I was just very lucky.
But people had to actually come to a place and vote for you, or
Correct.
they could do it online?
They did it online. And
but they had to know.
They had to know.
Yeah.
They had to know.
Did you campaign at all?
I just told a couple of people word of mouth, and it just sort of was just luck.
I didn't tell anybody.
And yeah,
no one.
just
Yeah, I didn't expect.
Well, you seem like a popular guy.
No, No.
like you see Tony's name on the ballot, and you're just
right?
like, well, why not?
But
I know him from the news. He's
Yeah.
somebody out there.
I put in the application, back, I don't know when it was. When did we apply? March, April, something like
That's
that?
right, yeah,
And,
March.
and I was talking to Andrew Goldenkrantz, who's the chair of the local Democratic Party, and he said, yeah, well, I was thinking of it also, but heck, it's going to be Biden. There's going to be no drama. I said, Andrew, there is a very, very small chance that this convention will be very, very important. And here we are. So
Yeah, I think that actually, Tony and Chris, you asked this earlier about the responsibility, and this is really key.
I was going to get back to that because I noticed you didn't, respond.
I didn't actually answer your question. And this is really key because this is what we call representative politics. I mean, this is true representation. A lot of people don't realize it. We have a primary in California. People know that. So you cast your vote as primary, but it actually isn't a direct one-to-one vote for that person. So even though people cast in the primary, there's actually very complicated formulas that they follow in order to determine how many delegates each candidate gets to then get to actually do the nomination of our candidate. So the process of electing us as delegates is a little bit, used to be very much a part of insider politics, and now has become more and more transparent. And my viewpoint is, let's make it as more transparent, as more representative as possible. And we're still working on that. But at this point in time, only just under 4,000 people have been elected throughout the United States to make this choice of who our next Democratic nominee is.
Were you involved with, God rest his soul, Glenn Challer? Was he part of this at all this time around?
not this time.
No.
Well, he wasn't, because
He
he
had
usually
passed.
tries to
Yeah.
put people together,
No,
put a
well,
slate
he did.
together.
He did 8 years ago for Hillary. I was part of that effort. Our Santa Cruz delegation was the only delegation composed of both Hillary delegates and Bernie delegates.
This is 2018.
That's right, yeah. And we were the only Hillary and Bernie delegations that talked to each other during the convention, because we weren't really elected. Yeah, it's pledged to Bernie or Hillary, but because Schaller put it together, and he was the voice of the underground backstage, behind the curtain.
He was a staff person for the Central Labor
That's
Council
right.
for
yeah.
years.
So he put together slates of people who supported union, and I'm 100%. Of union calls and says, we want this, you got it. A union saved my life twice. I am fully in support of unions. So he put together 2 slates of union backers, and with the agreement that, okay, we're pledged to one candidate, the other's pledged to another, but we're going to work for union activities at the convention and do whatever we can, which it turns out to be not much once you're there. Nevertheless, it was the idea. And
Were you in NABIT?
No, AFTRA, SAG-AFTRA. Yeah, no, NABIT was the engineers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
That
my
was
guy.
your- that was your dad,
He was,
right?
he was in there.
Yeah.
Nelly, are you involved much in politics around Santa Cruz County? I mean, is that what got you into this? Did somebody drag you in, or you threw your hat in the ring, but how did you know about it?
I learned about it as a vice president to our executive council for the California Federation. At one of those meetings, we spoke about, hey, this is opening up, if this is something that you might be interested in. And that's when I began to look into it. As far as being involved in local politics, out of our office, we do have a PAC. And so
A political action committee.
Yes, we do have a political action committee. And so we do reach out and also recruit whenever we have trustee positions that come available. We have several that are up for election this fall, and so we do reach out and to the community and seek and make connections. But as far as that, it's still, for me, it's still something very new.
Tony Russomanno, since you're a veteran of this whole thing, tell these folks or share with them what goes on. You've been to 4 or 5 other conventions as a delegate. What do you do as a delegate?
Well, if we were going and actually
Is it
voting.
boring?
Boring? No, usually it's not boring. If it was going to be Biden this year, it might have been boring, especially if we're going to vote ahead of time, because then we absolutely would not do anything. we still voted. I filled out my ballot this morning, and I was happy. It just felt so good. I made sure I got a copy, took a picture. Yay! That felt really good.
Did both of you fill out your ballots too?
Yes.
Yes, we did. Submitted.
I almost called you, Lani, this morning because it's like, hey, it's 6 o'clock. Where's my ballot? I haven't seen it yet. Right?
No, you
We're all
didn't call her to ask her who to vote for.
No, not at all. Right. So the fact is that like 8 years ago with Hillary, we had to sign in every morning to get our credentials to get into the convention. And nobody really paid much attention to it at the time, but there was a little clipboard with a piece of paper there, and you sign in for the credentials. Yeah, fine. And then also there was a little box. Check the box if you're pledging to vote for Hillary. All right, check the box. What we wouldn't realize at the time was that the law says, we could vote for anything. Anyone. We're not legally held to vote for the candidate we're pledged to. But what would happen is if we didn't check the box I pledged for Hillary, or if we said, I don't think I'll leave that blank, the head of the delegation pulled your credentials. You never got to the floor that day. So even though we could vote for somebody else, we couldn't vote for anybody else because we could never get to the floor. The way they did it this year is we all voted remotely, and the vote it's in. It will be final, and when tomorrow, the next day at 6 o'clock or so, and be certified by August 7th. So the name of the candidate, and I presume it's going to be Kamala, will be on all the ballots. That's the only reason that deadline was pushed up this year. So the activities for the delegates this year are going to be ceremonial, but it is going to be a hell of a show for people watching on TV. Remember George Clooney writing that letter saying Biden needs to step down? I absolutely believe that Clooney is going to make amends. He's going to have all of his Hollywood buddies up on stage. It is going to be a star-studded spectacular Take That Kid rock.
How Nelly and Lani, how do you feel about what Tony's saying, that they've kind of let the air out of the balloon? If there's no suspense, there's no drama on the convention floor of nominating a delegate and putting that delegate forward as your party's nominee for president, does that take a little bit away from what they're doing here?
Well, I feel, because I have been a part of the step-by-step process to get where we are now with having to vote remotely and understanding why, and I think it's important to explain to the audience here why we're actually having to vote remotely, and that is really primarily because of Republican shenanigans and Ohio. And so what happened there is that Ohio and the Republicans there have said, we're not going to actually put your Democratic candidate on our ballot if you don't have your nominee certified by August 7th. Now, in the past, the convention has typically been held after that point, that stick in that line in the sand that they set that date. But this year, they're not allowed. They didn't hold their vote early enough to allow the change in allowing them to have the nominee certified after the convention. Now, full disclosure, they actually did hold a vote, but it was, they said, well, it takes 90 days for that vote to actually become legal, which ends up falling in September. So there's such a gray area right now. We don't want to take a chance.
So in other words, there was a chance that Democratic candidate for president would not be on the Ohio ballot.
Absolutely. And we don't want to take that chance.
Yeah, but that's not the only reason. 100 years ago in New York City, Madison Square Garden, I wasn't there, but I'm told, the convention went to 103 ballots. It was the longest convention in U.S. political history. 103 ballots.
1924.
And they eventually nominated some poor sucker who had the poor judgment to be the nominee that year, and went up against and lost to the Republican Calvin Keep Cool with Coolidge. And he is forgotten to this day. And the Democrats do not want that kind of a thing, even though it would be the greatest. Yeah, 68 was an open convention, but even though it would be the greatest show on earth, it would be Survivor meets Squid Games. They don't want it. They don't know, sir. Let's just
Nelly,
make it nice and clean.
What did you make of this whole thing? Because some people are saying, oh, well, why don't we have an open convention? Because that's more democratic. Why vote early before you're even going to the convention?
Time. We are at a critical juncture, and we want to make sure, just as Lani was saying, that we want to make sure that everything is done in a way where if there's any kind of opposition or that want to be needs to be contested, there is, here we have this vote, here we have this, we could have then this convention where we're all gathering to really focus on those last days before we officially go to the ballot box, that we really focus on the work ahead, and the message to our nation, our voters, on why we would want to vote, why we need to vote for Kamala.
Well, another thing that comes to my mind is there is a party platform, and you can find it online if you just go Democratic Party DNC 2024 platform. Is it true that I think it's that you're going to be voting on amendments or resolutions to that platform? Is that your understanding?
There's the only vote that's going to be taken on the floor will be the vote on the platform. I don't know how many people have actually read the platform. Did you read it, Chris?
I just read the first few pages.
Okay, yeah. You read the Cliff Notes
How about
version.
you, Tony?
I didn't even know it was available at this point.
Yeah.
But I will read it. But it is absolutely not. Candidates are not required to do one damn thing that's in the platform. Even if everyone in the convention, if it was unanimous vote, this is our party platform. It's all optional for the candidate.
But have you been ever a part of a group that's put something in the platform?
Never. It's always decided ahead of time, and it's just it's procedural. It's
don't have
mechanical.
meetings. You don't have meetings going on.
There are meetings. There are meetings that go on, but
outside,
on a higher level, not the entire
like
delegation.
The California delegation. Do they ever get together?
The delegation gets together every morning for breakfast and a speech, but not no smoke-filled room where everybody debates subsection 2, paragraph 3 of the platform. None of that happens. That is done at a much higher level on the Democratic National Committee, the Rules Committee, the Platform Committee, all those people, the national delegates. Yeah, and that's representative. People, those representatives are elected by other Democrats through the years. They rise to the top leadership of the party, and those are the ones that say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to propose. Now it's up to the delegates to say yes or no, and usually the delegates just go along with it.
Nelly or Lani, have either of you been a part of anybody talk about these things at all? As far as maybe we can have this resolution. Thing that comes to my mind is a ceasefire in Gaza, for example. I would think that would be something people may talk about on the floor of the convention.
It may be brought up. Lani, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I haven't actually been a part of these ongoing conversations. I think, like Tony alluded to, there are groups that are having those conversations that we're not currently a party to.
Yeah, well, there's a group today that wants just 5 minutes. It wants 5 minutes of speaking time from the stage for someone speaking on behalf of Gaza. She's a doctor. Do you know about this? You're nodding. Okay. A doctor who's been working in Gaza. No political experience. No public speaking experience, but definitely working on the issue of the awful, I would say tragedy, but that doesn't do the word. It's hell that's going on there. And they asked the committee, can we have that time? I haven't heard yet whether a response has come, but that's something that I just saw this morning.
Nelly, you have anything to add to that, or do you know anything about it? Or
no, I don't. I was just thinking about, I'm coming from our convention for our national federation, and we have, we send our delegates, so I go as a delegate, and we have there are resolutions that are made up from committees all over. In
advance.
In advance. They come then to certain committees that you are a part of, and you can have these discussions, and then it goes to the floor to vote. So that's sort of like listening to this conversation. That's what it's reminding me of, but I have not been part.
So that's like the National Federation of Teachers?
Yeah.
That you were just there in Houston?
Yes, yeah.
Did you say that Kamala Harris was there too?
She was there. She was there on Thursday morning.
And what did she say? Did it impress you, or what did you come away with?
I came away with confidence in a woman who is going to advocate for human and civil rights, essentially, women's rights, education, labor rights. So it was a pretty powerful speech.
And is that the American Federation of Teachers? Or
Yes, the
because
American-
they endorsed Kamala as well.
Yes, we did endorse.
Chris, let me
Kamala.
say one other thing about Gaza, and that's
Of course, Tony Russomanno.
Chris Krohn on Talk of the Bay on KSQD. Listen, so Kamala was the only name, right, on the ballot, but she wasn't the only issue on the ballot. In some of the primaries, you could vote for uncommitted. And enough people voted for uncommitted that there are actually 30 delegates out of the 3,000 delegates at the convention
4,700 I looked.
who are, including the super delegates, whatever they call them now.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. 30 delegates who are representing the people in the United States who voted uncommitted. And it's those 30 delegates who are asking for speaking time on behalf of this medical worker who will speak on Gaza. So there is some standing that they have. It's a legitimate request. We'll just see what happens.
Interesting. Did Gaza come up, the ceasefire come up at all at the convention for the American Federation of Teachers that you know of?
We do have a human rights, civil rights committee, and there was a discussion on that on the floor, and it's.
Did they vote to support a ceasefire, or do you know that at all? Or
Our resolution was to support peace, and it's something that is. It is a tough conversation amongst our delegation. And
it is a tough.
It was lively, and it could have lasted for many, many hours. But yes, it was a conversation that was held.
That's good to hear. This is KSQD 90.7 and KSQD.org. We are coming to the end of the first half hour. My guests are Tony Russomanno and Lani Faulkner and Nelly Vaquera, and they're all delegates for the Democratic National Convention, which will be in Chicago from August 19th to August 22nd, and KSQD will also be there. And I'm hoping to meet up with these folks and find out how their adventures are going on the convention. So we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back in a Santa Cruz second.
Hello there, Santa Cruz. It's Dr. Dawn. Have you missed me? Don't worry, your old friend hasn't gone away. I've only moved next door to Thursday at 6 p.m. on KSQD. So come on over, and we'll have a comfortable chat about whatever ails you, as my grandma used to say. Also, maybe scientific discoveries, health politics, health policy, and answers to your questions and comments about all of the above. So remember, 6 p.m. at Thursday is the new time for Ask Dr. Dawn.
If you appreciate jazz, then tune into Jazz Tracks every Thursday evening from 7 till 10 p.m. right here on KSQD.
Join your hosts, Noreen Nolan, Bill Van Bloom, and Charles Perroni as we present thematic musical sets celebrating this unique art form. From classic recordings to new releases, you'll hear a variety of jazz styles.
So join us on Jazz Tracks and enjoy the richness of jazz on KSQD 90.7, 89.7, and 89.5 on your FM dial and on the web at ksqd.org.
We are back. This is Chris Krohn for Talk of the Bay. What's left of that Santa Cruz left? We're talking with Tony Russomanno, a former radio broadcaster, in fact.
And TV.
Yeah. And Lani Faulkner, who was a supervisorial candidate, and she won, or they all won, spaces to go to the convention, and they were voted as delegates to represent Santa Cruz County. And Nelly Vaquera is also with us, president of the Pajaro Teachers Federation. I hope I got that right. Federation of Teachers.
And what do you mean former radio broadcaster?
I'm sorry.
I'm on
No,
KSQD.
no.
I do a show every Saturday morning.
Yeah.
What a week.
Thank you.
With
Give that
Eric
applause.
Nelson. Yeah, at
What
11
time?
o'clock.
11?
What a week. 11 o'clock. KSQD. Eric Nelson, Russomanno. Here you go.
Yeah. Wow.
Strap on, baby.
And Lonnie wanted to know why you talk so fast, Tony.
Because I only get an hour every Saturday. I get 1 hour in the week, And you're talking fast. And we're both from the New York area,
Well,
right? I went to school in New York.
yeah.
You're from Long Island.
So, the New York Times, this is a perfect day. The New York Times said that the delegates were going to vote today, and the NBC in Chicago reported that delegates to the Democratic National Convention will officially select their nominees for president in a process that begins Thursday. But unlike in past years, they won't do so in the raucous party atmosphere of the convention floor or even during the convention itself. Instead, they'll quietly fill out electronic ballots in the comfort of their homes, offices, or vacation spots more than 2 weeks before the first delegate steps foot inside Chicago's United Center, end quote. That was from NBC Chicago. I want to just go back. I'm getting from the three of you that has not. Well, I know, Tony, you're not going as a result.
No, it was
because you're off to Alaska.
I'm off to the further north than that. I'm off to the Arctic Circle of traversing the Northwest Passage.
It just seems like it would take something away from the aura of excitement at the convention that we're going to do this on the floor.
It's going to be an exciting convention. It will be. It will be a fun convention, but nothing of substance will be decided.
Okay, let's go into what it's going to be decided right before the convention. Another thing that's going to be decided is the vice president. Who will Kamala Harris pick as her VP? And I would love to hear from each of you what your dream candidate is and what you think the realistic candidate is. And are they could be one and the same person. I'm going to go to my right over here, Lani Faulkner in the studio, KSQD 90.7 and KSQD.org.
Excellent. Well, I think, here is where I think the conversation of strategy has to come in. So who would I love to see in that position? I love Pete Buttigieg. He's a favorite of mine. He's intelligent. He's served his country. He's incredibly savvy. He's been serving as governor and more recently in the transportation secretary role. All of these things are incredible. However, I realize in terms of strategy, I've also thought of Mark Kelly from Arizona, from a swing state, as being a potential strategic choice. So I would say those would be my top two, but I also realize that there's strategic conversations happening behind in the inner circle that we may not even be thinking of all of these pieces.
Buttigieg is your favorite and Kelly's your strategic choice, or they're both strategic choices?
I think Pete Buttigieg is my favorite, and Mark Kelly is the strategic choice.
Nelly Vaquera, who's your favorite?
I agree, Pete Buttigieg, but I think that looking at, ideally, that would be wonderful for the same reasons. But I'd also look at somebody who is pro-labor, and so that could be Tim Walz.
Tim Walz is from Minnesota. Mm-hmm. He's the current governor of Minnesota. That's one you don't hear a lot on the West Coast. Tony Russomanno, you have any predictions for us?
No, I have no predictions, but I can tell you who I favor, who I like. I love Pete Buttigieg. He is grade A choice prime husband material. I'm telling you that. Lani, you stay away from him. He plays on my team, all right? Pete is fantastic. This guy opens his mouth and thoughts come out. To have him... And,
pretty amazing for a politician, huh?
Yeah. Actual, important thoughts, right? And he expresses himself so well. He and Harris together would make a dynamite team in terms of how they present their messaging and communication skills unsurpassed. However, strategically, yes, I would go with either Mark Kelly, Arizona, great military background, swing state, and also Governor Walz, Minnesota. But what the heck do I know? Nothing. I'm sorry. I am not Griswold the Magnificent. I cannot make predictions accurately.
Wow.
I just have to say, someone pointed out that if you take away the S of Harris and the judge of Buttigieg, you get a really funny,
we're going to let you figure that out in the leisure
I don't
of your
know if
home.
I can say that on
they got to
Shame on you.
And
Lani.
okay. What other stuff that you're going to hopefully talk about is
we'll have none of that.
What do the Democrats stand for, and what are the issues facing our next president, and especially Kamala Harris? And we heard a little bit on the streets of Santa Cruz today. We heard about immigration, drugs, and housing. And if you would play a little bit of that right now, we're going to go to that tape.
It looks like some rain, looks like some rain, boys, looks like some rain. Out in the east, and it looks like some rain. Up on the laundry room. Lost all my money, but a $2 bill, $2.
There you go. I'll play.
So if you had an opportunity to tell Kamala Harris something, send her a message, what would that be?
Align your actions with actions of love. Always love, use your words with love, and be true to yourself and your heart.
Do you plan to vote?
Hell yeah.
Are you a registered voter now?
Hell yeah, for Democrats.
Thank you. I'm speaking with
Stephen Washington.
And, if you could tell Kamala Harris anything, a message about you or your community, what would that be?
Make it to where our head isn't slightly above water so that we can afford actual housing. I hear a lot of issues about global warming and things of that nature, and I don't know if we'll be able to live to see the change, but within her term, I hope we'll be able to live to see a change in housing prices.
Thank you, Stephen.
Well, you need to repent because you put a lot of family members into jail and you didn't do anything to take care of the families.
Who are those family members she put in jail?
I don't know, like people with plant matter in their backpacks.
Oh, when she was DA.
Bag of flowers.
Thank you. Say that, Chris Krohn for KSQD Radio on Pacific Avenue, and I am speaking with
Jocelyn.
And Jocelyn, what do you think about Kamala Harris is the candidate for the Democrats? If you had an opportunity to send her a message, what would that be?
I feel better about voting for her than Joe Biden, so I'm hopeful.
Is there any issue that you're concerned about?
Border Patrol, but we'll see how that goes.
And meaning increase or decrease or?
I guess like negative feelings towards immigrant crossing that she's commented on before. So, yeah.
Okay. And do you have anything that you would send to Kamala?
I'll hope you're a good president. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Chris Krohn, KSQD Talk of the Bay, and those were voices on Pacific Avenue today responding to a message. How would they message Kamala Harris? What would they like her to know about? And
one thing really stood out was the guy that talked about housing, right? It was Tip O'Neill who said all politics is local. What is the president of the United States going to do about housing? But there's so much that needs to be done. I mean, the Santa Cruz Civil Grand Jury, right? Their report that says we're not keeping track of who gets to live in affordable housing. It's absolutely amazing. How is it that we're not doing that? I mean, what would it take? I don't know if they're people or maybe they're commuting to Google. We don't know. People. It's supposed to be about the local workforce. So yeah, let's fix that. So I think we need to work on that on the local level. What will the president do? Just keep up the good work, and not, just keep that orange menace out of the White House.
Well, and she's being supported by at least 7 environmental organizations that hadn't endorsed Biden. So Biden, of course, is endorsed by a number of environmental organizations, but she's been endorsed by many, many more. And, there's something personal that I actually really admire that she said recently, and that is the reopening of a conversation of giving voting rights to convicted felons. I think that's, I imagine in a fascist regime that any of us could be a convicted felon, and to lose the right to vote would be, it's really scary, and people who are convicted felons don't have that right. Now, I learned a new thing, which is California gave that right back in 2022. And Kamala Harris is willing to reopen that.
And you know why? You know who was responsible for giving that back?
States.
It was Kamala's sister, Maya. And boy, if you're looking for a target, what are the Republicans going to do? Stand by, friends. Listen to this. The Republicans are going to go after Kamala's sister, Maya. Maya is an attorney. She worked for Policy Link. She was a lead attorney in the League of Women Voters versus McPherson. And that's the one that reinstated voting rights for over 100,000 Californians in county jails that were on probation from felony convictions. You don't think the Republicans are going to jump all over that? Remember her name, Maya Harris.
Well,
she is the target.
The Democrats have already gone after J.D. Vance, and
he went after himself.
They dug up one of his friends, and she came out and made a bunch of statements that he's not the same guy that he was when he was
Of course, he's not the same
college.
guy.
But what I like is I've been reading is about big oil. Like, she actually made a statement again about big oil supporting the Republicans. I mean, they've been trying to get Joe Biden to make that statement for years, and he has not waded into those waters. The other thing is that really impressed me is that she didn't show up when Netanyahu spoke to Congress. And I thought, oh, okay. And there was a lot of hope amongst younger people. Even though she met with him one-on-one, she did not stand there behind, as she would as overseeing the Senate. She would have to stand behind Benjamin Netanyahu when he addressed Congress, and he was invited there by the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. So I think some things may change. Nelly, you identified yourself, when we were talking on the phone, as a first-generation Latina, right? And so the woman that was interviewed today that just spoke about the border, it was kind of, I had to parse, like, okay, what is she saying? But it sounds like she wants a little more compassion and empathy on the border than Kamala Harris has shown in the past when Biden sent her down there and she made some statements from Guatemala that weren't taken very well by some immigrant organizations.
Yeah. Well, the young woman that you spoke to earlier, I wasn't sure where her comments were going.
I had to ask her later what she meant.
My mother is an immigrant, and she's a pretty rad woman, and has given a lot to our country as well, in the work that she's done. I was a newcomer teacher, worked with many students who either were here living with family, so that their parents were still in their country of origin, and they were incredible young kids. And the families that I worked with, any type of negative commentary in the realm that I've worked with, families who have come to our country seeking asylum or seeking or trying to navigate the immigration to get their documentation, that system.
Not easy stuff.
It's not easy stuff. And I have yet to feel unsafe, yet to feel that danger. And then sometimes I sit back and I think, like, you put the entire issue on the shoulders of one person when it's bigger than that.
Okay, so how do you think this is going to you'd think that this would be a positive in the Republican, on the Republican side, because the first two things of their platform are seal the border and stop the migrant invasion, and number two is carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. So you'd think that somehow Kamala Harris's view on immigration, when she was making some statements that some of the immigrant advocates disagreed with, including some Congress people, and our senator from California, Senator Padilla, also came out against those statements by Kamala Harris at the time. But how do you think that'll play out amongst the Democratic base? Is that going to? What's your sense?
Well, I think that there's going to be a lot of learning and understanding, because I believe that, or I would like to maybe believe that she just was not very versed on, like, the real issues and how large those the roots of all those issues of why people come to the United States to seek refuge, and what have we done, the policy wise, to their countries to provoke that.
Exactly.
So
especially
there
El
is
Salvador,
this
comes to
big
mind.
story. Yeah. So I think that she's now going to be in a position of really needing to understand the history and create that team and have and learn about how we can work together and work to improve the policies we have in place. and the pathways we have in place, and to begin to address the severity.
Lani Faulkner, one of those people on the street today, talked about housing, and Tony mentioned in his remarks that is the issue that you were really facing when you're running for supervisor. And this is something that came up, and I saw you last night at the Scott Wiener Sandy Brown face-off at the hotel, and I thought that Councilmember Brown did quite well in responding to Scott Wiener's sort of supply side economics. Supply and demand is going to solve everything.
I've never liked that guy.
Kind of thing. What's your sense of the housing situation, and how is the interplay between federal and local on housing?
The federal, so when you're talking about the interplay of federal and local, we have decreased the amount of federal subsidies over the last 40 years so tremendously. So if you talk about what the federal government can do is help to provide more funding for our affordability. The thing that I didn't hear over and over again, I know several of us actually submitted questions, but they were being screened in last night, is that nobody talked about private equity and the fact that they have now bought over 25% of single-family residences in this country, and that private equity is running everything into the ground. They're running veterinary hospitals, elderly facilities, you name it, they're buying it up, they're running it into the ground. It's all about maximizing profits. Corporations use, bankruptcy as a way of making money. Trump has used bankruptcy as a way of making money. So we have all these mechanisms that really have undermined the solid working classes, the communities, and our housing. We needed a data-driven conversation last night, and I didn't really hear that.
No.
And we needed someone like Miriam Greenberg, who does a lot of data around this last night, to be a part of that conversation. But the federal government can have a lot of really support some major changes to change the trajectory that's been happening about private equity and those bigger conversations.
I did notice Sandy Brown, council member, was the only one up on stage that brought notes. Of course, the interview had some notes too, but two of the people up there didn't seem to they just were talking off the top of their head.
I'm very data driven, so some of the things that she mentioned are things that I've actually had in my own research when I presented. But it's complex. These are very complex conversations, and oftentimes people's eyes glaze over when you start having them.
Yeah. You're data driven. I am internal, feeling driven. And in fact, I was submitting 4 words. I was watching online. So in the chat, it was like, submit your questions in chat. I didn't have a question. I just kept repeating 4 words. Show me the water.
Water's a big deal. I mean, I said this 30 years ago because I'm a farm girl. I was raised on a farm, and I said, water is going to be like gold someday. Well, we're there, and we really have to think about that in a very constructive way. I mean, why are we creating ways of shunting water to the ocean? We should be creating ways of saving water.
If you want to know about water in Santa Cruz, talk to John Laird. He did his senior thesis when he was at UCSC. I think he's class of 69 on water, and guess what? He became the sort of Secretary of Natural Resources for the state of California as well.
One doesn't talk to John Laird. One listens to John Laird. He's fantastic. But and the developer, the guy representing Workbench, right?
Sibley Simons.
Sibley, yeah. God, I did not expect that at all. What was your opinion of him?
I thought he was very heartful. Actually, I've been trying to talk to him for months, and I was like, oh, wow, he comes from heart.
So we're talking about a forum that was put on last night by the local online publication Lookout Santa Cruz, and they do this every once in a while. And they brought together people to talk about the housing and the housing crisis basically in our part of the world. This is KSQD 90.7 and KSQD.org. I am really having a nice energetic time here with 3 delegates who are going to go to the Chicago convention for the National Democratic Convention in Chicago. And this Lani Faulkner, Tony Russomanno, and Nelly Vaquera. And I have a thing I want to read to you. You didn't have to read the Democratic platform, but I'm gonna read one of the first paragraphs on the first page, and I just want you to maybe respond to it. Our nation is at an inflection point. What kind of America will we be? A land of more freedom or less freedom? More rights or fewer? An economy rigged for the rich and powerful or where everyone has a fair shot at getting ahead. That comes from the Democratic National Committee platform that is going to go before the delegates. It's an 80-page document. The Republican one is 16 pages. And I urge anyone just to put them side by side if they just want to look at the two documents and compare them, and you can compare parties pretty well. I'm going to go to Nelly Vaquera. What do you think? I think it's trying to say what are the differences between voting Republican and voting Democrat here. They were giving some comparisons there.
Yeah, it's very stark. Where this is such an important election, and because it is going to impact everybody. It's going to impact public education. It's going to impact, if you have a job, it's going to impact you. It's going to impact women. It's going to impact your health care. Alongside, with immigration. And I mean, there is so much at stake with this election. So yeah, there is a lot. And if we want affordable health care, the possibility for it to continue or to, be improved upon, that's at stake. If we want, that, and that is inclusive of like the medication that we might need to use. I have an expensive inhaler that isn't covered under my health insurance, and I have good health insurance. So it's these are the things that matter to the common person, which is a majority of us. We're not all multi-billionaires in this, special circle. So yes, all these things that you read, this is a very impactful moment in our history. And so, yeah, it's something that we cannot go to sleep on. And so that's why it's 80 pages, because we need to know.
Tony Russomanno, this watershed moment, or do you see it as a watershed moment?
Yeah, the Democratic Party platform and free cookies for orphans. Come on, give me a break. It is absolutely an optional thing. Yes, it's very nice. The words will be very nice. Yes, it points out the differences between Democrats and Republicans. Of course, there are those important differences. This election is not about the next 4 years. This is about the next 40 years. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know that already, folks, there's no 80-page document that you're going to read that's going to persuade you otherwise. So, yeah. Kamala Harris and to be announced for president and vice president, period, end of story. Thank you for being an American.
Mm-hmm. Lani Faulkner, what's the difference between the two parties, or are we at an important moment? Because every time they say, this is the most important election in your lifetime.
I just have to say both Nelly and Tony nailed it. I can't add any more. I have personal little vignettes I might want to lead to, which is we right now have a completely for-profit country, and for-profit shouldn't be in our prisons. For-profit shouldn't be in our health insurance. For-profit shouldn't be in a lot of arenas. As pro-labor, we need to make sure that people who are working a job are making a living well enough to afford the home that they live in. We're so far from that. 45 years ago, corporations paid 75-80% in taxes. Now they don't have to pay anything. It's ridiculous. So let's move the needle.
So RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, is running, and he's been up and down in various polls, but he's polled as much as 20% in some polls. And we got about 2 minutes left. How about a reaction from all of you? How would you convince or what would you say to someone who's thinking about a third party, either Cornel West, RFK, or Jill Stein? Those are three names that are on the ballot along with Harris and Trump.
Hey, RFK Jr., it could be worse. He could be Ralph Nader.
I think being data-driven, I've looked at RFK's website, and he's doing a lot of emotional appeals to people that are very emotionally interesting. But I just have to say, as a data-driven person, I can say over and over again that there's no metal behind the man. He was good in environment. I think that his statements are interesting, but he just doesn't have the experience, and he doesn't have, the whole vaccine thing is a whole bunch of misinformation. As a scientist, it's a problem.
Nelly Vaquera, you get the last word.
Oh, well, I'm going to agree again with Lani. I'm glad I'm sitting here with you, seriously. And because, especially for the vaccine bit. It's just we need somebody who is going to be based on fact and reality.
All right, I think we're going to have to leave it there. And this is Chris Krohn for Talk of the Bay. My guests, thank you so much for coming to the studio. Lani Faulkner, Tony Russomanno, and Nelly Vaquera. This is KSQD 90.7 and KSQD.org. This show is about getting active. You know, you listen, but you got to go out and do stuff. So I'm going to say good night and good luck, Santa Cruz, and get out there and get people to vote and look at those platforms and inform yourself. An informed voter is the best voter. Good night.
Fighters died up on the hill. They sang a red flag. They wore a black one after they died. It was Mockingbird Hill.